At 1:19, flight MH370 was transmitting a normal message to air traffic control. 2 minutes later, the aircraft disappeared from civilian radar. There was no emergency call. No malfunction was reported. 7 hours later, satellite data would confirm a crucial fact. The plane was still in the air. A modern commercial flight had disappeared from tracking systems without immediate explanation. In this documentary, we examine the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. In the early hours of March 8, 2014, the world was asleep. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. At 12:41 a.m., Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 lifted off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The aircraft, a Boeing 777-200ER, was one of the most advanced and trusted long-haul airliners in the world. On board were 227 passengers from 14 different countries, along with 12 crew members, business travelers, students, families, children, engineers, people with plans. The takeoff was routine. Weather conditions were good. Inside the cockpit, the captain and first officer communicated calmly with air traffic control. The aircraft climbed steadily to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Everything appeared normal. At 1:19 a.m., as the aircraft approached the boundary of Malaysian airspace, the co-pilot made what would later become one of the most analyzed phrases in aviation history. "Good night, Malaysian 370. The transmission was calm. Nothing in that voice suggested urgency. Nothing hinted at what would follow. Less than a minute later, MH370's transponder, the system that transmits identifying data to civilian radar, stopped responding. The aircraft vanished from secondary radar screens. At first, controllers assumed it was a minor technical problem. There was no immediate reason to panic, but as minutes passed with no contact, unease began to spread. Then came a discovery that changed everything. Military radar data would later show that MH370 did not continue northeast toward Beijing as planned. Instead, shortly after disappearing from civilian radar, the aircraft made a sharp turn to the west, crossing back over the Malaysian peninsula. This was not a drift. This was a controlled maneuver. The plane flew back across Malaysia, then continued northwest toward the Andaman Sea. Still no distress call, and yet something clearly was. Somewhere inside that aircraft, decisions were being made, or systems were failing in total silence. For nearly 7 hours after disappearing from radar, MH370 remained airborne. This fact would not become clear until days later, when investigators uncovered satellite data showing automated handshakes between the aircraft and an Inmarsat satellite. These electronic pings revealed that the plane had continued flying deep into one of the most remote regions on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean. By sunrise, the aircraft was gone. No wreckage floated to the surface, no emergency beacon transmitted, no final message reached the ground. Air traffic control alerted authorities. Search and rescue operations began almost immediately. Initially, efforts focused on the South China Sea, the plane's expected flight path. But there was nothing, no signal from the emergency locator transmitters. As the hours turned into days, confusion transformed into global alarm. A modern jetliner had disappeared in the age of satellite tracking and advanced aviation systems. In a world where smartphones can be located within meters, how could an aircraft vanish without a trace? Families gathered at airports waiting for answers that did not come. Was it a catastrophic structural failure, a sudden decompression, an onboard fire that disabled communication systems, or something intentional? MH370 had changed course deliberately. Communication systems had been turned off in sequence, and the aircraft had flown for hours into darkness. The world was watching, and the greatest aviation mystery of the 21st century had just begun. As the sun rose over Southeast Asia, uncertainty began to turn into urgency. Air traffic controllers had lost contact with flight MH370 hours earlier, but the absence of wreckage or any distress signal created a strange and unsettling silence. But this time, nothing. Search and rescue teams were deployed almost immediately. Initial operations focused on the South China Sea, the expected flight path toward Beijing. Ships scanned the water, aircraft searched from above, radar data was reviewed repeatedly. Still nothing. No emergency locator signal. Then, investigators made a discovery that would reshape the entire search. Military radar revealed that MH370 had not continued northeast. Instead, shortly after disappearing from civilian radar, the aircraft executed a deliberate turn back across the Malaysian peninsula. It was controlled. The aircraft crossed Malaysia from east to west, then continued northwest over the Andaman Sea before vanishing once again, this time completely. Why would a commercial airliner reverse course without any communication? Investigators turned to satellite data. Unlike radar, the aircraft's satellite communication system had continued sending automated signals, silent electronic handshakes, to an Inmarsat satellite orbiting high above Earth. MH370 disappeared from radar. 7 hours. During that time, there were no voice transmissions, no distress calls, and no manual communication of any kind. Using complex mathematical analysis of satellite signal timing and Doppler shift, experts traced a possible path, a long arc stretching deep into the southern Indian Ocean. If the aircraft had gone down there, finding it would be extraordinarily difficult. What followed became one of the largest and most expensive search operations in aviation history. Dozens of ships from multiple nations combed the ocean. Weeks passed, then months. No black boxes. The silence was haunting. For families of the passengers, time seemed frozen. Loved ones waited for news, any news, but answers did not come. What happened to MH370? As investigators examined every possibility, several theories began to emerge. One possibility was a catastrophic mechanical failure, perhaps a sudden loss of cabin pressure. In such a scenario, oxygen levels inside the aircraft could have dropped rapidly, incapacitating passengers and crew within minutes. The aircraft, left on autopilot, might have continued flying until fuel exhaustion, eventually descending into the ocean far from land. But a more troubling possibility was also examined: intentional human intervention. Data suggested that communication systems were turned off manually and in sequence. The aircraft's course change appeared deliberate. Could the aircraft have been hijacked, or was the diversion initiated from inside the cockpit? No evidence could confirm these possibilities, but they could not be dismissed either. As the investigation continued, small fragments of debris would eventually be discovered years later on distant shores of the Indian Ocean, proof that MH370 had indeed entered the ocean. But the main wreckage remained missing, and without it, the final truth remained hidden beneath miles of dark water. As the search moved deeper into the southern Indian Ocean, the mystery surrounding MH370 only intensified. Finding a small debris field in such an environment was like searching for a needle in an abyss. The satellite data became the central pillar of the investigation. From these signals, experts constructed two possible corridors, one stretching north into Central Asia, the other arcing south into the Indian Ocean. As additional analysis ruled out the northern path, the southern corridor became the primary focus. It suggested that MH370 had continued flying on autopilot for hours, gradually moving farther from civilization, deeper into isolation. At some point, the aircraft likely ran out of fuel. When fuel is exhausted mid-flight, engines fail one by one. Without pilot input, it would descend into darkness, uncontrolled, silent, unseen. Why did the aircraft turn back in the first place? Investigators carefully examined the cockpit crew. Captain Zaharia Ahmad Shah was an experienced pilot with over 18,000 flight hours. The first officer, Fariq Abdul Hamid, was young but well-trained. Both had clean professional records. Investigators discovered that the captain owned a home flight simulator. Data recovered from the device showed simulated routes across the Indian Ocean. Nothing definitive emerged. Another theory proposed hijacking. Could someone on board have forced the aircraft to change course? No ransom demands, but it did not fully explain the deliberate turn back across Malaysia. Some aviation experts suggested a sequence of events, an onboard emergency followed by a decision to return to Kuala Lumpur. Communication systems might have been disabled during attempts to manage the crisis. After that, crew incapacitation could have left the aircraft flying aimlessly into the Southern Ocean. No confirmed voice recording, no final words. Only mathematical arcs across a digital map and fragments of aircraft washing ashore years later. In 2015, a breakthrough seemed to bring hope. A wing component known as a flaperon was discovered on Reunion Island, over 3,700 kilometers from the suspected crash site. Ocean current modeling confirmed that debris from the southern Indian Ocean could drift to such locations. Additional fragments were later found along the coasts of Mozambique, Madagascar, and Tanzania. Each confirmed piece proved one thing: MH370 had entered the ocean, but none revealed how. The black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, remained lost beneath miles of water. And without them, the final moments of the aircraft remained locked in silence. The question was no longer just what happened. The question had become, how could this even be possible? While investigators analyzed data and search teams scanned the ocean floor, another battle was unfolding far from the sea. For the families of the 239 people on board, time did not move forward. It stopped. Initially, there was uncertainty, perhaps a delay, perhaps a technical issue. But as the hours stretched into a full day, the tone shifted. Anxiety turned into dread. Phones remained silent. The lack of confirmed facts created a vacuum, and speculation rushed to fill it. Families clung to hope. As long as there was no wreckage, no confirmed crash site, hope remained alive, fragile but present. But with each passing week, hope became harder to sustain. Grief without confirmation is a unique kind of suffering. It is a state suspended between loss and expectation, an emotional limbo where closure is impossible. Without physical evidence, without a body, without finality, the mind struggles to process what has happened. Meanwhile, the absence of answers created fertile ground for imagination. Yet, investigators remained focused on evidence. The multinational search effort eventually covered more than 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor, an area larger than many countries. Despite this extraordinary effort, the main wreckage of MH370 was never located. In 2017, after years of searching and mounting costs, the official underwater search was suspended. Without a confirmed crash site, without recovery of remains, without black boxes, the story felt unfinished. In response to the tragedy, aviation authorities around the world began reviewing tracking systems. One of the most significant changes involved aircraft position reporting. International regulations were strengthened to ensure that commercial aircraft transmit location data more frequently and more reliably. The disappearance of MH370 exposed a vulnerability in global aviation infrastructure, a gap between technological capability and operational practice. In a world where smartphones can be tracked within meters, a wide-body commercial aircraft had been able to disappear for hours. The event forced the industry to confront uncomfortable questions. Could this happen again? What systems needed improvement? How could transparency be increased in crisis situations? As years passed, independent search initiatives emerged. Private companies offered to continue the hunt under no-find, no-fee agreements. New sonar technologies promised deeper and more precise mapping. But still, the ocean kept its silence. The mystery of MH370 had transformed from an active investigation into a haunting absence, an absence of answers. And for the families, the absence remained personal. Birthdays passed, anniversaries came and went, children grew up without parents, parents aged without closure. The world slowly moved on. But for 239 families, March 8, 2014 never truly ended. As the years passed and official search operations slowed, without the cockpit voice recorder, without the flight data recorder, and without a confirmed wreckage site, satellite communication records suggested that after its unexplained turn west and long silent journey across the night sky, MH370 most likely followed the southern arc into the vast Indian Ocean. No distress call transmitted. At some unknown point, fuel exhaustion would have begun. Aviation experts have carefully modeled what likely occurs when a large commercial aircraft runs out of fuel mid-flight. As fuel levels drop, the first engine begins to flame out, followed by the second. Without power and without manual control, the aircraft begins to lose altitude. All of this would have happened in darkness. No radio transmission, no visible signal, no recorded final message. Why did MH370 turn back across Malaysia in the first place? Investigators determined that several communication systems, including the aircraft transponder and the ACARS reporting system, were disabled in sequence. This pattern did not match a sudden catastrophic failure. It suggested deliberate interruption. The possibility of pilot involvement has been widely debated, yet no definitive proof has ever been found. Captain Zahariya Ahmad Shah was highly experienced and respected, with more than 18,000 hours of flight time. Extensive investigations into his professional record, financial situation, personal life, and psychological background revealed no confirmed motive or clear explanation. Another theory proposes a technical emergency, possibly a fire, electrical malfunction, or decompression event, which may have forced the aircraft to change course toward Malaysia before disabling communication systems. If the crew later became incapacitated due to oxygen deprivation, the aircraft could have continued flying on autopilot into the remote Southern Ocean until fuel exhaustion occurred. Fragments of debris discovered years later along the western Indian Ocean, including the confirmed flaperon found on Réunion Island, proved that MH370 did enter the ocean. The main wreckage remains missing. The flight recorders remain unrecovered, and without them, certainty remains impossible. MH370 stands today as one of the most perplexing events in aviation history, not simply because an aircraft disappeared, but because it vanished in an era defined by advanced technology, global communication, and real-time tracking. Until that day comes, the story of MH370 remains unfinished, a silent flight into darkness, unanswered, unresolved, and hidden beneath the vast and unforgiving waters of the southern Indian Ocean.